Gotham Season 4, Episode 7, A Day in the Narrows. Now this episode continues the Professor Pyg situation within the city, and it gets really intense. I thought it was intense last time, but it continues to get even more intense as, Pyg heads are delivered to everyone, of course, except for Jim Gordon, which, I gotta be honest, it definitely makes me wonder about the new character Harper, because I was like, if Pyg is kind of all in the case about like, oh, Jim Gordon's like the good cop amongst all of the GCPD, what does that mean for her? But ultimately, it kind of came down to he just wanted to kill everybody. But it totally made me suspicious at first, and it was like, oh no, he sent it to everyone just because it's all of the GCPD. But Jim is like the poster boy because he's the good cop. Except for, as Penguin put it, except for when he's not, which I thought was one of the best lines in the whole episode, where it was like, he doesn't come after you. He's like, it's because I'm a good cop, and he's like, except when you're not, which there are quite a few examples of that. So I love that line when he said that. But definitely a great episode. I'm surprised how much they're utilizing Pyg as a villain. A lesser known villain, I mentioned that last time. I first heard about him in one of the more recent Batman cartoons. And so them utilizing him as this sort of villain where it gets pretty intense. They have people getting chopped up, and in the last episode, him like sewing through a guy, like putting a grenade in his stomach and having the pin attached to a string all the way through his body. Intense stuff like that, is a good version of his character. Definitely an insanely dark version, and he was great in this episode too, especially the ending where we find out he killed the cop and put on all this makeup and changed his face to look like the guy. And he gives him, gives Jim the line about, you're one of the good ones, and he gives him like the fake clues of them going to the abandoned courthouse and everything. And he calls Jim, and he goes, he's doing like his fancy voice, and then he does the weak voice, and it was like, holy crap, like he tricked me. And I just thought that was such a great point for that character. And then, he calls him at the end of the episode, and he's taking off all the makeup and all. He took like the hair off and everything, and he was like a bald guy, and I was just like, this is actually really cool. Like he's just an insanely dark villain, but he feels so moral. And I thought for sure this was going to be that episode where it was like, this is why I hate the GCPD, because of the whole, lost my family deal. We might still get that in the next episode. Maybe they won't even bother with it. I would prefer that, even though I feel like, that's the kind of the generic reason is why you hate this set of characters, is because this set of characters killed or didn't help prevent the killing of your family or, some loved ones. So I'm sure we will ultimately get that explanation. I'm sure Jim will flat out ask him, why are you doing this? And then boom, exposition. But for now, I kind of just like him as this crazy guy who's going around continuously, succeeding at killing off cops and setting up crazy traps. Great moment, of course, them going into the trap at the old courthouse. I love that whole scene. Like, not only was, the Penguin line great, but that whole moment, which I was looking forward to anyway, because it was in the promo, Bullock and Jim like freaking out and yelling at each other. And I was like, that scene was just as good as I was hoping it would be. And Bullock was like, I gotta go with Penguin on this one. Like, I'm pretty sure he's in there. I think that he called you just to, mess with you so that we would just leave. And it's like, we have an eyewitness. And of course, once he said that, I was like, I know that's just gonna be the cop that they're looking for, totally tied up. And it was just crazy. And of course, they go in. The first thing Bullock does, like, the guy turns, he's like, hey, and he just shoots him. The weird thing was that he was even standing up. Like, it just seemed odd to me. So maybe he knew, maybe that was the whole point, but I was like, it seems weird. Like, if you know that the point is to kind of trap everybody, why not just, like, lay down to be like, hey, it's obviously not me. Like, you do not need to shoot me because you think I'm Professor Pyg. So I don't know if that was like the whole point, because once he went down, of course, that's when, the noises kicked in, and then the Gatling guns just come out on both sides, and they're just, lighting the place up. People are getting shot up. Of course, all the main characters just survive. But, it's just an interesting moment. I was like, wow, this is actually kind of nuts. And they're duck and cover sort of situation. And it's like, well, this is an absolute disaster. Like, Pyg warned me for real, nobody listened, and Bullock ended up being the captain who shot one of his own police officers because he didn't listen to another one. So it's just a crazy moment, and I was kind of sad at the end, after Jim was like, the grand hero and everything, and he saw the other cop tear up like the criminal license from the guy, and he kind of looks at Jim and he nods. Jim looks back at Bullock, and I was like, oh, I don't want them to like not be friends, because that's what it seemed like. Like Bullock was going back, and he was drunk, and he was like leaning on one of the lights to like make it back to his office, and I was like, I hope they stay friends, because I love them like as buddies. So it was just like, oh, it's a sad little moment. Like Bullock's now like the uber outcast. Like he's not taking the money from Penguin. Everyone's kind of going towards Jim's side because of what he did, and Bullock is the guy who screwed up. I mean, he's the captain who screwed up and got, not got one of his officers shot. He shot the officer. So he's in such a crappy position. So I was like, I don't know what they're going to continue to do with his character, but I just want Jim and Bullock to remain friends ultimately. But that was just one great point in this episode. And that was, our main villain who continues to live. They haven't found him. I mean, the closest they got was his whole plan, which was like crazy evil genius, in disguise and everything. So the main villain, really freaking cool for this episode, just like the last one. Then we have our side story. Well, not even our side story. This was like a snippet, really, of the whole episode. And it's actually, the continuing manipulation of Penguin by Falcone. And so he's watching the news, and it's like, those are my guys and everything. And she gives him a bit of advice where it's like, my father never would have openly been with the GCPD because they're weak and this and that. And he's like, thank you for your advice. It's told me exactly what not to do. And he's like, I'm going to get more involved personally. And she kind of snapped at him and was like, don't ask for my advice if you aren't going to use it. And then she just turned around. And I love that scene because she was just serious. And I was like, I can't tell if that's her legitimately mad or if that's her like fake mad because she's continuing to play him. So I was like, I don't know. But either way, it just seemed funny where she was just like, she snapped at him and it was like, all right. And she turned around and went back to the kids. So, of course, he was mad and he kind of went off. But it's just continuing manipulation. Also, because Zaz is visiting like his grandmother or whatever, we get to see a new guy in this episode, which I remember somebody thinking that, it was like on Twitter, but I think it was before the episode ended, they thought, oh, maybe he'll be Deadshot because of the scene where he gets like some shrapnel and he ends up like going blind in one eye. I was like, oh, you know what, that could totally end up being the case. He's far more eccentric than Deadshot. If anything, I would say maybe a one-eyed executioner, because that guy is, well, the only version I know is from like the Arkham games, and he was like the crappy, silly bounty hunter, and he kind of sucked. But I was like, maybe that's more likely. And then, ultimately comes down to the end of the episode, and we had this guy who was pretty funny, headhunter, and that's probably just his actual name from the comics too. That's probably not something they made up, so he's probably a legitimate character. But he was definitely funny. He goes through like, you want to know I have 2 guns, and it's like, it's the first one always works, the second one's just my signature. And so he's going through, he's just like this silly guy. They even have him say that a second time after like their first big raid, and he's in the background, but a cop is like laughing at the joke and shaking hands with him and stuff. And it's just like this crazy over the top guy who's a great shooter. And he gets to the end, he's got the, one eye's messed up, and I'm like, okay, let's see, how this goes for his character in the future. Him coming back, is he gonna be as good with one eye? It doesn't matter, because you can't be good without, any blood in your body, because Penguin was just pissed. And he's just talking, he was like, man, maybe Jim was right. He was about to say, maybe we should have something. And Penguin was just like, and just stabs him straight in the neck, and I was like, whoa, I did not see that coming. He was like so pissed, and I was like, in that moment, it was really funny, because once again, it was a lot like with the Falcone thing. I was like, I can't tell why this is happening. I couldn't tell if it was because he was mad at the GCPD. I couldn't tell if it was because he was mad at just everything, or if he was just mad at the guy, because he didn't really like him that much. Even in the beginning, he was like, he's a bit eccentric, and later in the episode, I think it was when he was with Falcon, it was like, yeah, he's dumb, but he gets the job done. Like, he never liked him in general, so it was like, I can't tell. I think it was just everything coming together, because even during, outside of the GCPD, it's the fact that he's kind of losing favor with the media, because, he's giving his speech and everything, and then Jim comes in as, like, the grand hero who went in despite, everything that was going on, and so he was like, I'm kind of just doing my job or whatever. And I love the fact that when he's walking away, the woman was like, that's hero, Jim Gordon, who gave a very modest, statement after his insanely heroic moment and stuff. And it was just really funny how everyone's kind of building him up. And of course, Penguin wants that for himself, and he still wants to be, the ruler. So it was just very interesting. Like, everything kind of came to a head at that point. It was like, I've lost everything today. I got you know, like Falcone, she pissed me off. The trap was legitimately a trap. I was totally wrong. The GCPD, with me being a part of that, she was technically right. So once again, it goes back to Falcone where it was like, you know, him going against her kind of proved her right. So there's so many things in that moment. But he just stabbed him in the neck, and then he stabbed him in the stomach, and it was kind of funny. He was like, "That." The second was my signature, and I was like, "That was kind of messed up that he did that," but it did make me laugh. And so, unless they, you know, do some more Lazarus Pit stuff for this random villain for the Headhunter, I'm gonna assume that he's officially dead. So, you know, that was definitely something, and you know, there was a couple of different points like main story stuff, side story stuff, but it was Penguin just not liking the dude, and plus Penguin just screwing up all day long led to that guy's death. So it's unfortunate because I thought he was actually kind of an interesting character. The dude had an interesting voice too. It was like oddly deep, but it wasn't like gravelly deep. It was like this weird in between. I was like, he should do like voiceover work. But then we have like our other story where we have Bruce, and he's going through like his crazy mode. You know, of course he did actually kill Ra's al Ghul. So that is an official thing that happened. So he's dealing with that, and he ends up talking to this girl that he used to go to school with, and so they end up running into Tommy Elliott, who they aren't gonna do it, but he's Hush in the comic books. So I'm like, they would have to skip so many years for that to even be relevant. Unless they did it like insanely early, it wouldn't even make sense for them to actually do Hush this early in the story, unless they like change the actual person. But he runs into him, who I'm pretty sure is played by a totally different character, unless that guy just looks insanely different. They even showed it in the promo, but I wasn't paying that much attention. But when I saw him, I was like, this dude has like black hair, and I don't think the other guy even had black hair. I think he had like blonde hair or something. Could be the same guy. People change their hair colors all the time. But I was like, I don't think that's even the same character. It was just like, you know, the point. But yeah, they end up meeting, and you know, he meets him. He meets this random girl, and then he meets this other guy who's kind of a dick to him, who he has like a crazy rage daydream about just like beating the dude to death. So it's like, all right, well, let's get the heck out of here. Let's go to this club, and the guy can't get them in. So Bruce is like, oh, you know, okay, you know, give me a minute. He goes in, he buys the whole club, and then is like, all right, let's go, except for you. And then he takes the guy's glasses and puts them on. And then he goes, he makes out with this girl, he gets insanely drunk. He looked like he was doing drugs. Like, he had like, his face was like so red. I was like, that's more than like, oh, he is underage drinking wine. I was like, that looks like he did some cocaine. Like, that dude was on drugs. But he's dancing like crazy, and they have like the whole slow motion sweating sequence where he's just like, I'm new Bruce and all this other stuff. But we'll see how that plays out. I'm sure it'll be short-lived because he's Bruce Wayne. He has to grow up to be Bruce. But this will be that moment where he, in an odd sense, perfects the Playboy lifestyle. I guess he's trying to be this new Bruce to get him out of his own head because he killed a guy, and that's all he can think about is the fact that he killed him. But on top of that, he mentioned, like, I should feel guilty and horrible that I killed someone, but not 100%. So I am curious where this is headed. It should be fairly chaotic. I don't know how much is going to like bleed into some of the other storylines, but he is Bruce Wayne, so I would imagine it has to, in some regard, at least with Selina Kyle, for sure, they need to have like that odd reunion with him being like new Bruce Wayne, especially with kind of what she's going through, which is like our other story in the episode. So I assume that they're going to run into each other before he gets out of this crazy phase that he's currently in. But like I said, that does lead me to my last story with Selina, Tabitha, and whatever in the world is going to be going on with Barbara. This new version of her, which we still didn't get any answers. I thought we were going to have some extra answer as far as like this weird hand thing that she did with Ra's. None of that seemed to really come about, like no true explanation there. But ultimately it's like, oh well, Ra's is gone. We're getting rid of the business. He was bankrolling us, so bye-bye. And that was pretty much it. And Selina's like, well, if we rob these people as a team, you know, we work together. We, you know, like it proves that we can work without him bankrolling us. We can do it ourselves and make it work. She gets busted. Totally gets a guy killed, which was insanely gruesome. Despite all the stuff they did with Pyg, I think that was like the most gruesome death in the episode because, like they ran that tire on his stomach and his stomach just ripped open and it was just blood shooting out. I was like, that's actually insanely intense to show. I thought it was gonna be like, you know, the typical thing where it's like it's on his face and then Selina would see it, but they wouldn't show anything. That's what I thought was going to happen. We would just see like the tire coming down and then it would cut. But it was like, nope, we're just gonna put it on his stomach so it's not his face ripping off, and then just show, like, it's not insanely detailed, but it was his stomach like ripping open and then blood like just shooting out because the tire is spinning. And I was like, I'm surprised they went that far with that. They didn't really show much, but it was just the context of that was a bit more gruesome. They've shown some things. I mentioned that, I think that was in last season, where they like decapitated somebody and they showed for like a split second the head actually like fall back. And I was like, that split second is way more than you would ever expect them to actually show off. But that was definitely one of the more gruesome kills I think the show has ever really had, just because it was like, oh, I thought this was one of those, like, here's this crazy death, and then they cut to the reaction. It was like, nope, we kind of see it where, you know, it's his flesh being ripped off and blood shooting out, so it was kind of nuts. But of course she gets kind of pinned down, so she calls Tabitha. Tabitha goes in to try to rescue her. They both have to hide, and then Tabitha, I thought for sure, I was like, she's like, you know, I'm gonna shoot, you find an opening and go. I was like, they're about to kill Tabitha. Fortunately, Barbara came in, just being Barbara, she's almost as important as like a main character. Like, she definitely has plot armor sometimes, because there's no reason that all those people should have been killed off by her. And she was about to kill like the one person who was moving fast enough to do with the shotgun, and then he got hit with the whip, and then they took him out. But she was like, did you order a tie? Like, no. Okay. And she was like, because I don't have any. Boom, boom, boom. And she just took out a few people. I was like, they all had, like, the whole point of them being there was that they were ready to shoot somebody. And then she shot one person, and everyone was, you know, it was TV, so they were all frozen in place. Like, oh crap, we don't know how to react fast enough, even though it's just lift and pull, and that was pretty much it. But she took most of them down. Tabitha, Selena come in, finish the rest off. It was like, all right, well, we are officially working together. It was like, I didn't come down here just for kicks. It was like, we're going to do this. So she took her cut and was like, we're going back to the nest, and now the ladies are back together. So that should be pretty awesome. It should certainly be entertaining, because the promo was everything I've been waiting for since the beginning of the season, since the end of the last season. The next episode is the one I've been waiting for. And it seems like it's going to be even crazier than what I was expecting, because we have Tabitha and Selena and Barbara actually going to the underground nightclub. They're going to find Grundy, so that should be nuts. It seemed like there was a scene in there somewhere where Jim is going to end up running into Lee again as well, which means that he will run into Ed, which also means that he'll run into Butch, which won't make that big of a deal for him. There's no personal attachment there, but there's a lot in the next episode, and I really cannot wait to see how all this stuff ends up playing out. And it just makes me wonder what's going to happen with more characters learning about, you know, Butch coming back to life. I want to know when that's actually going to get to Ed, because I feel like that's going to have a bit of a connection to him, or not Ed, but to Penguin, when that's going to kind of hit him like, crap, Butch is alive. Like, the weird relationship that they've had the whole series, I would love to see his reaction to finding Butch as Solomon Grundy. So I'm really looking forward to the next episode. Like, I've been waiting forever for Tabitha to see Butch as Solomon Grundy, and it seems like there's a part where he ends up fighting her, so I'm sure that has something to do with Ed, and kind of interesting revenge for him. It totally makes sense. He wants his revenge on Penguin. Why not on Tabitha? Because they have that odd relationship where, you know, people chopping off hands and all the madness and people betraying each other. Who knows? Like, she made up with Barbara, but it seems like Ed doesn't really care for making up for anything, so he's going to send Butch to kill his former love. So it's definitely an interesting form of revenge, poetic even. Not exactly fair, but definitely poetic. But I'm sure she won't actually end up dying. It'll just be like a crazy moment, and she'll try to get through to him, but it won't work 100%. But either way, we got some characters finally coming back together, and I just cannot wait to see how that works. So looking forward to the next one. Can't wait to see what they do with Pyg. Mostly, I just want to see the reaction of Tabitha when she sees Grundy, and just how that whole scenario is going to end up playing out. The reason she probably ends up in the ring is because she tries to kill Ed, and then Grundy sees that, like, you know, you can't hurt Grundy's friend, and then that's how she gets thrown in. So that makes perfect sense, because that's probably how it's going to play out. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it, and I would actually love to know your theories on what is going to happen when Tabitha ends up meeting Grundy. Like, how's that whole situation going to play out? Who's going to fight who? Who's going to yell at who? You know, I'm sure there will be some talk of hands having been chopped off and coming back. But I would love to know your theories, just in general, how that reaction is going to, you know, play out. Like the initial reaction, and how that's going to kind of cascade amongst the other characters that are going to be involved in whatever that storyline is going to be. So I'd love to know your theories on that. And of course, like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.